This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is Paul Adelini, the CFO of Russell Reynolds Associates, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 948.
The barbecue concept is a very labor-intensive concept. To run a location, we employ approximately 120, 130 employees, not at the same time, but to man one of our restaurants. So coordinating the labor and understanding the labor is a metric that I absolutely have to understand. Obviously, it has a huge factor on our margins. If we do not control labor, I mean, that can fluctuate the P&L 2 to 4 points very, very easily.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's episode, we speak with CFO Christopher Crawley of Hofman Hospitality Group. Our interview was recorded at last month's Sweet World. Among family-owned restaurant groups, Hofman Hospitality Group weathered the pandemic better than most. For its part, the 75-year-old company evolved with the times, adding food trucks and ghost kitchens, not to mention a chief financial officer. And as to why the Southern California family enclave decided it was time to hire a CFO says a lot about HHG management, as it does its new CFO. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
Hello, we're speaking with Christopher Crawley, CFO of Hofman Hospitality Group. Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate being with you, Jack.
Well, thanks for the time, Chris. And as you might know, we always begin with this question. We ask our guests to look back for us, and what we're looking for are some of those experiences that you feel prepared you to go down the CFO path and become a CFO. What comes to mind for you?
Well, we'll go way back. To be quite honest, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do out of college. I had a business degree. I was a college athlete, and I had hopes of playing second base for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It didn't quite happen. So ultimately, I had to go out and figure out what I wanted to do. And so I was actually given a great opportunity to work for a company called Cal West Group up in Santa Barbara, which actually ran local tennis clubs there. So the first thing that came to mind of me was really understanding business just in a local sense, and understanding the financials around running just a local tennis club began to spark my interest.
And are you like doing everything at the tennis business? Is it everything from checking the inventory to tennis ball sales? I don't know.
Absolutely, I can remember going back then as well. Yeah, taking inventory at that point. You talk towels, making sure that towel services were happening on time. I really kind of was a jack of all trades, and then on the side, I would produce the financials for a local CPA firm for the tennis group.
Now, did you study accounting undergrad? How do you do that?
So I attended UC Santa Barbara, and we don't have an accounting degree, but it was a business economics degree. So that was the I guess the educational portion that kind of pushed me in that.
Yeah, it was enough.
Sure. So spent some time there, and I got to pretty close with some of the folks in the CPA firm that oversaw the tennis club, and they saw a skill set, and so this is the great part of getting to know and networking great people. They made a phone call for me, and I ended up working out of the Miami office of BDO Seidman. Shortly after that,
They moved you across the country. Is that right?
Went across the country, so left Santa Barbara, California, and worked out of the Miami office, but ended up residing in Jacksonville, Florida. So, but during that time frame, though, I pretty much lived out of a suitcase. I was doing lots of audits in the transportation industry. Some very interesting experiences there. I remember doing inventory counts on a barge. These freightliners that had these barges, and opening up the barge door and literally snakes falling off the barge. So it's a little different experience for a kid coming out of Southern California.
I want to go back to the tennis club.
Yeah. No, but that kind of leads into additional experiences that began to prepare me for the role. Once again, it kind of went along with my curiosity of business and really understanding. Working in public accounting on the assurance side, it gave me the insight on how these businesses function and the thought process that goes throughout. It interfaced me with a lot of CFOs, a lot of high-level finance people. So it gave me a lot of perspective of what the job required. I was fulfilling my job as an auditor, but I was much more interested in the thought process around how people were making these businesses successful. And so those were definitely triggering moments in my career.
You're thinking industry now. You're thinking you could see yourself in that environment.
Absolutely. And so we skip ahead a few years. And essentially, I still stay within the assurance internal audit function, but I moved back to California and go to work for what was known at that time as Countrywide. And if anyone's from California, I'm sure they're aware. Southern California was kind of Countrywide U, and so I got myself into industry there, still within the internal audit function. As well, focus on the financial reporting side.
We're in the mid 2000s now, though. Is that right?
We are
Countrywide was growing like crazy.
It was. If you're from Southern California, you would know that 101 corridor. It was. They were well represented. But yeah, this actually, to answer your question, it comes back. This is early 2000s, actually, 2004, 2005. So I think for most listeners, they kind of know the story of what happened at Countrywide, and me now understanding business and kind of insight. This is where I had intuition. I knew something was happening, and so obviously I moved along, and at that time I really.
Did you call it a mortgage bubble? What were you calling? What were you thinking? Yeah.
It's. I'm going to refrain from the thoughts of there. Usually when that's come and gone, and we've moved on, and I think everybody's in a much better place today. Yeah. But going back to my experiences though is after moving out of the audit function, I took a role with Bally Total Fitness, and that's when I really felt at that point I was now getting involved with making or being part of the decision making around the way the business functions. That became very exciting to me.
How big was that then? There's quite a few locations, wasn't there?
Oh gosh, back then, I mean, nationally, Bally's was pretty big. I mean, we were over 1,000 locations, headquartered in Chicago. At that time, I was working out of just a regional office in Norwalk, California. So,
Are you an assistant controller, or what are you? What path are you entering?
Yep. Yeah. So at that point, I was an accounting manager that oversaw all of the West Coast operations for Bally's, and so obviously it was quite a change from doing the assurance and internal audit. However, it became like much more rewarding because I actually saw how the P&L was affected, understanding the bottom line, getting involved with how operation works or didn't work. So that became very intriguing to me. Those were other examples of experiences that began to set me on my path. I think we all can go back to 2008 and what happened in 2008 with the recession, and Bally's was not immune to it, and so
gym memberships.
Yeah,
some of the first things. Some people cut back sometimes. Yep.
Yep, absolutely. You look at it, and in times of recession, some of those luxury items do go, and there are all kinds of data points and touch points that point to why things don't work. But obviously the recession was a big component of that. But in a way too, I look back at it, it was a great thing for me personally, because what it did is it forced me into having to go find another job. And obviously having to find another job sometimes it means finding more opportunity. And that's how I found myself at Sizzler. And it was interesting. This whole time during my career, I was in the public space. Sizzler was recently acquired by a private equity at that time, and it was the restaurant industry. So in my view, I was kind of thinking this was just going to be a stopping point for, a few months, a year, until, I was on to my next. But it wasn't. It was actually ended up becoming a very, very intriguing opportunity, and I really understood the nuances of the restaurant industry. At the time, too, when everything was so much in a flux, and even as the restaurant industry was even struggling as well, I kind of thought to myself, and I said, as long as there's still air and the world keeps spinning, people are still going to eat at all times. So there's always going to be business there. It's just kind of where to go find that type of business and getting with a solid brand.
Yeah. But you're very aware now that economic or following the economy. Here's a business, but it's so true. And again, we're still talking 2009. I think you joined Sizzler, so everyone understands the timing. Quite a few Wall Street people out on the street at that point in time too, and you were just with a business that happened to be, sensitive to the economic situation of so many. But what is the track you're getting on? And I know you get on the controller track here, and that's what I think is interesting as well. Did you think of yourself as a controller, or?
It goes back to when I came out of college. I never really knew what I wanted to do. But now at this point, moving to Sizzler and really getting involved, understanding the operations, I began to see how I affected other people. And that was very intriguing to me as well.
What do you mean by that? That's interesting. What are you getting at?
Absolutely. So obviously at this point now, I have attained controllership, and now I'm part of really running a team and building a team. So throughout my entire career, I was just intrigued. Hey, how does business work? How are these things happening? Now there at Sizzler, I'm tasked with building a team. We actually relocated at this time. This is back when everybody was commuting into work. We were in Culver City, which is a tough place to commute to if you're in the Los Angeles area. If you live 10 miles away, that's probably a 50-minute commute due to traffic and everything. So our ownership at that time chose to move our office from Los Angeles down to Orange County, Mission Viejo, which is in Orange County. So during that transition, I lost the entire team. And so we went through a complete rebuild of the accounting team. And that's what really put me in touch and kind of brought things full circle, because now I had to understand the people and how do people play the role in making the business tick, or essentially the accounting and finance function tick. At that point, trying to convince a staff to commute 60, 70 miles for work, we weren't successful.
Yeah, very interesting.
In doing that. So
terrible traffic too on certain days. I'm just assuming that, I mean, that's what you're pushing up against, sort of that balance that people are, don't want to give up.
Correct. But what it made me do is now I had to tap into different skills. I knew and understood what, from a business perspective, on what resource we needed. What I did not have the skill set at that point, though, was really understanding in people what to look for in people and how to really achieve a winning team.
So you're evaluating job candidates. You're doing some of the interviewing. You're very involved in that process and rebuilding the team. How am I doing?
Absolutely. Doing all of that, but then also trying to satisfy the culture aspect, especially in the restaurant industry, bridging the gap from accounting, compliance, finance to operations. So there's, in the industry, it's kind of this nomer, or there's a myth that the accounting folks, finance folks, always kind of get in the way of operations people. I understood this loud and clear. I saw that. So me understanding that, I really had to understand, how do I bridge this gap? How can I make sure that I'm getting like-minded folks that can handle the diligence, the compliance that we need to produce from an accounting standpoint, but also be able to work with our operators and build good functions so that we have good synergy across the organization. And I actually, I was able at that point to, obviously help partnering with a great CFO, CEO, Carrie Cramp at that time, and a great CFO, and Steve McDermott, to help drive, that process. But, for that time period, we had built a solid team, and it also enhanced my skill set in really understanding what, a winning team looks like.
You said something interesting there, and I know it's a part of what many finance professionals have to accelerate in building relationships with the operations side. When you say that, you're looking for team members who are going to be able to make that connection, what's the characteristic that distinguishes those people?
Some of it's humility. I think, on the operations side, a lot of times these are folks who want to do a great job, produce a great product for our patrons.
It's all about the product. It's all about,
there's, if you've talked to a chef, there's great pride in what a chef does.
Yeah, it's a good example.
You need to take that into account. And so then you have, someone on the accounting side that's very black and white. This is what the regulation is. This is, so I say humility in that because you have to be able to take the time to, in layman's terms, explain that to operators. And if you can get that connection, now you can create synergy between the two to figure out what is the best process that we can achieve, so that both sides are accomplishing a win. Accounting is getting what they need from a compliance perspective, or whatever data or information that flows in from operations, and operators are able to function in a way that is less handcuffed by certain compliances that are around the business, and especially too in the restaurant industry. Especially we have many of our at Hofman's Hospitality Group, many of our operations are in California. So just on the operation side, tons of regulation. Just around food safety, they're going through all that. So then you pour that on top of accounting functions. That's a lot for our operators. And what I try to do is make sure that we're aligning with folks that are understanding of that task that our operators have.
I want to just mention to the audience that you made an investment of 6 years at Sizzler, but it sounds like it was an investment well done. I mean, you're quite pleased with all of what you learned along the way there.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to definitely say that was a lot of my learning ground. And it goes back to, two people, actually three people there. When you look at mentorship and learning from folks that really have set a good path, Kerry Cramp, who was CEO, he did a wonderful job there, had a great track record before, and I appreciated him tremendously because he gave me the opportunity to actually build the team, the trust to handle the accounting function. Also in a private equity environment as well, to trust all of that. There were some great people over there. Our FP&A guy, Al Picard, was a huge mentor on the finance side. He really dove into the inner workings and understanding of what made Sizzler tick. And if you're in the restaurant industry, I mean, understanding margins around trying to run a salad bar, you still do full service type of dining. There is a lot of complexity in that, and so I did. The investment was great, but also too it was around the people who also I work shoulder to shoulder with.
Well, you have one other career chapter before you step into the CFO role at Hofman Hospitality, but it seems like you're beginning to feel like you have both feet on the leadership path now. Yeah, I mean, do you leave Sizzler feeling as if I'm ready to go down that path?
Well, there was one last. So, the next role was strategic. I took, and it was a bigger role, and that was with Yoshinoya America.
So it's hospitality still, is that right?
Still hospitality. So that's why I say when I go back to that move I had to make back in 2008, that propelled me into the restaurant industry. And as you mentioned, Jack, with the 6 years that I invested into Sizzler, it was I also invested it into the industry as well. I gained expertise and really. So yes, I began to feel very comfortable. In the leadership role within the industry. But the next obviously change that I made in my career was going to work for Yoshinoya America, and this was a very interesting also learning ground that took place. And
Japanese owned.
So Japanese. So Yoshinoya. America is Japanese owned, so it brought kind of more of the international component that I wanted to also kind of add to my resume and also get experience in. Every organization before I had worked for, was domestic, and now this gave me, a different type of challenge. Still in the controller's role, but a much bigger role because of obviously the reporting, the holding company in Japan, they always kind of coin themselves as the McDonald's of Japan. In Japan, they're pretty much on every single corner. Haven't had as much luck here in the U.S., but regionally in the Southern California area and certain areas of Southern California, you'll see them on every single corner there. But very similar to Sizzler. Japan's roots were already rooted as far as the business is concerned. I believe they opened their doors in 1978. And so they actually had quite a few legacy staff in place. The nuance here was this was the first time that the Japanese board chose to have a domestic leadership team come in and lead the organization. So I was brought in the controller role under this new regime of new leadership. And so we were tasked with this at this point going in, year over year sales were struggling. The brand just didn't, it had kind of run its course. And so we came in to kind of course correct. One of the biggest things that I did initially coming in also, which when we start talking about getting your feet embedded was, board meetings with Japan. This is the first time now where I'm having to sit through international board meetings. And one of the first things I partnered with our CFO to do was basically change our audit partner that we had. Things are, for legacy companies, that's a difficult task, especially a legacy Japanese company. But we were successful, and initially we were, right away we were huge wins, and we're able to save, the company $500,000 in audit fees right within year one, and also begin, good relationships with more middle tier audit firms that were able to come in and scale more to where Yoshinoya America was operating at that time.
I want to have a few more career-related questions for you during the mentoring round, most likely. But we're right there where you step into a CFO role after this last chapter. Chris, can you tell us about Hofman Hospitality Group? Tell us about this company. What does it do? What are its offerings, really?
Sure. So Hofman Hospitality Group is a family-owned business that they have been in business for over 70 years. 1952, the first Hof's Hut was erected. And what's interesting, our chairman of the board, our owner, Craig Hofman, he was actually born on that day when the first Hof's Hut opened. So Hof's Hut is kind of a throwback Americana diner.
Is it California? Where are they?
It is California based. So southern the current Hof's Huts are located in Southern California. The organization grew the Hof's brand to about 21 units. Today we only have 3. It's very nostalgic, but all 3 of them do very, very well. There is quite a following in Southern California for the Hof's Hut concept. But so Craig Hofman, in the late 90s, though, he had an idea to bring barbecue to the West Coast. So he did a round of visits throughout the South and put this concept together, which is Lucille's Smokehouse. And so we offer, what makes us unique is we actually do all of the smoking of the barbecue meats directly in the center of all of our restaurants. And so currently today we have 24 units located in between California, Arizona, and right here in Nevada. So that was Craig's, he built a very strong brand of barbecue, because on the West Coast we have very few barbecue offerings, and really was able to get that brand to take off. So the next exciting piece that Hofman Hospitality offers, though, is a high-end dining experience as well, and that is Saint and Second. A lot of that has been driven by our current CEO and president, Brad Hofman, Craig's son, and this is a chef-inspired seasonal menu that we have a location in Belmont Shore, which is a beach city there in Los Angeles County. And then this is where we're looking to expand and grow the business. We'll have a new opening in Manhattan Beach area of Los Angeles, and we're hoping for a lot of success with the Saint and Second concept.
Was this a connection, or was there a recruiter involved? And your resume certainly was ripe for this spot, but what was it exactly?
No, both. So there was a recruiter involved, and actually at this time, I was in the private equity space and basically setting up a bunch of back offices for a private equity group out of San Francisco, and a recruiter came knocking and said, you know what, I think you should meet these guys. At this point, I was out of the restaurant industry, so that's what we didn't touch upon that.
Oh,
but,
okay. You left for you had a
well,
little,
during the pandemic.
Okay.
During the pandemic, I felt hey, I needed to make a change in there.
Yeah.
But what this was too is when I met Craig and Brad Hofman. It goes back to now the people part, the relationship, being able to align,
right,
and understanding what they were with.
And here we have a family-owned company. I mean, that's a whole.
Exactly. That raised a red flag to me at first, but the recruiter said you have to meet them,
meet the people, yep.
and I will tell you that means made a big difference. Meeting the Hofmans. Totally understood right away upon that first meeting with them how they survived 70 years. But there was a lot of synergy. Brad Hofman and I see business very similar. That was great. I felt we would align well, and the concepts. I mean, these are very, very strong brands in Southern California that we have, and I felt that this is a footprint that we can grow.
You said I saw business similar to the way he does. What do you mean by that?
Good question. And what I mean we see business similarly is we align on the approach. So for example, you could come in and a CEO says, I want to grow 60 locations. I need to raise capital for this immediately. Well, we haven't figured anything out yet. We have not built the model out. I can appreciate Brad's methodical approach to make sound decisions as far as how to invest capital and also when to invest capital. So that was a lot of how we saw business alike. He did not react a lot on emotion. He allows analytics to come into play, and so all of a sudden that gives me a voice to produce that.
Oh, interesting. You knew that if you had the analytics and the analysis to back something up, you could count on him to see it similarly.
And a lot of times, this is no dig on family businesses at all, but a lot of times the mindset is made up already. That's the direct, especially too if there's been success. But what I definitely see is Brad, really the entire Hofman family that's involved, the propensity to continue to want to get better and build upon the legacy that is already existing. I could definitely sign up for that.
Well, it occurs to me we are at Sweet World, so I have to believe there's a technology piece to your story here. As you join this company, do they have the systems in place, or was this something on your to-do list? I don't know.
Yes, no. Once again, they have. When I came in, there is a huge propensity from the entire staff there to just get things done, whether that was manual, back
any
of the
way
envelope,
you do it, just
any
get
way
it
they
done.
had.
Yep.
Systems were in place, but the company has grown organically, but obviously expanding the footprint, multiple concepts, a lot more sophistication needed to come into play. So technology, that was I think one of the big things as well the Hofman saw in me was being able to bridge that gap with technology and bringing in these modern tools to provide the type of decision-making material that was going to be necessary, and also expounding upon the experiences, working with, foreign boards, high-level decision makers, in being in that advisory role for those folks. I'm able to channel that right into their process in growing the business.
Can you just give us maybe a quick sense of, and often this question helps listeners understand the nature of the business as well. We all think we understand hospitality. Most of us probably don't. But what are the metrics that you're just looking at daily to make, be certain the company's performing the way you believe it to be? I mean, is there certain numbers you're looking at?
Sure. Well,
for your first cup of coffee.
Yeah. So with the majority of our locations operating in California, when you look at all of our prime costs, I have to look at labor every single day. That's this is where a lot of sophistication needed to come back into play. One of the big drivers that I needed to do was marry labor dollars with revenue, so that you could understand productivity, and then be able to benchmark and make decisions around labor. The barbecue concept is a very labor-intensive concept. To run a location, we employ approximately 120, 130 employees, not at the same time, but to man one of our restaurants. So coordinating the labor and understanding the labor is a metric that I absolutely have to understand. Obviously, it has a huge factor on our margins. And if we do not control labor, I mean, that can fluctuate the P&L 2 to 4 points very, very easily.
Can you share with us how there were numbers perhaps that you were able to make more visible to the management team because you had the tools or, the technology that allowed you to do that, whether it was a new dashboard that could pop up, every morning instead of once every month, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. I mean, that's where the technology comes into play. That is where we are relying on the NetSuite platform to give us that quick glance, especially for ownership, so that now all of a sudden they can get a daily glance of how the business is functioning. These were all initiatives coming in that we discussed before I even came on board, that this is the other side too. They were very open that were not in place, that needed to be put into action on day one. And so that was also great as well, the transparency, understanding what my tasks needed to be coming in. But it's interesting because as we face the labor headwinds in the industry that we have, this information is getting more and more important for the decision making, because we're coming out of a period over the last couple of years because of the pandemic, the pent-up demand in the restaurant industry. I mean, the labor model for the Hofman Hospitality Group had changed because the barbecue concept during the pandemic, it traveled well. So we saw record sales because of delivery orders, and it took a lot less labor to produce those orders. So margins were great during that time.
Very revealing too at the same time.
Yes. Now what we see is a shift back to now where we've had to add more labor to accommodate the in-store sales. And it's just gotten, obviously inflation is hurting our other controllable and non-controllable costs. So all of these factors play a huge role in our decision making.
Well, we're going to jump to our finance strategic moment question.
And again, this might be at Hofman Hospitality, or it might be, back at Sizzler, or even earlier. What would you like to share with us as a finance strategic moment, again?
So my finance strategic moment did not happen in the four walls of the office. This happened years and years ago, as I observed actually my parents. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom, she was the more conservative side. Worked at Kaiser. Obviously one of the largest healthcare providers. Had a 40-year career. What I noticed, my dad, he ran a fairly successful recruiting firm throughout the 80s and 90s. So as a child, I guess I'm dating myself. As a child coming up, right away I had intrigue on just the aspect of how he ran the business. My dad, I felt like he did a great job in running his business, but was a little slow to change. I don't know if anyone recalls Monster.com, and when all of the search, all of the online search firms were coming about. So that right away, I was influenced a little bit of from a finance perspective strategy. How does business change, and also being able to adapt and change to business. My mom on the other side too. She ran she was an administrator for Kaiser, continuously having to change and adapt she worked in an allergy department, and so obviously there were changes that were taking place, and so there was an area where she remained cutting edge. So I kind of take perspective from both of them. I loved my dad's entrepreneurial approach and risk taking, but then I also saw my mom's side of being steady with a plan, but staying cutting edge over time. So you kind of got the high risk, big reward, and steady over time. And so I tend to marry that perspective together, and it's interesting because I realized just a few years ago that in my business thinking, that I was so influenced by just observing what my parents actually were doing. And that to this very day, when I'm making business decisions, it's funny how that dynamic creeps into the thought process.
Yeah.
I don't think you're alone. I think many finance leaders to this day have much parental guidance. From episode 753, this is 1 Minute with CFO Jim Calabrese, CFO of Final Sight.
From a finance perspective, it was a company that had started in 1998, but it had never had a finance operation. So, the early challenges were sort of trying to explain to people why certain financial metrics and systems and processes were important. And, so now the organization is well beyond that, right? We've gone through a couple of exit events and, we've changed ownership hands a couple of times. So we're owned by Bridge Growth now, so that they took us over in 2016. Since they've joined the organization, we've built up sort of a public school sales group, and that, we've really gone after and won market share in the public space in the United States.
We're going to jump to what we refer to as our mentoring round, where we'll ask you several quick questions. We like to also have our guests reflect a little on the personal side for us.
What is something most people don't know about you?
Right off the bat, I am an avid flathead catfish fisherman.
Now that would be it.
So a Southern California kid, average, and an avid flathead catfish fisherman.
The flathead catfish is what different from the rest of the catfish family, or are they? For those of us who lack the catfish knowledge, I don't know.
So the interesting, real quickly, the biggest difference is, I focus a lot of my fishing at nighttime for this. So everyone out there that probably does know about it, they're probably wondering, okay, if you live in California, where are you doing this at? And so the lower Colorado River, which separates California and Arizona, actually has a trophy fishery that hardly anyone, a lot of times I'm there over a weekend and I won't see a single soul. But it's kind of a hidden gem that I'm kind of putting out there now. But that is definitely something no one would.
What time of night does this happen?
This happens. Hopefully, if you get a bite, it happens sometime through the night.
Well, thank you for that. That was a surprise. Wondering, is there any book that has influenced you along the way? Is there any? It doesn't have to be a business book. It might be just something that you've enjoyed, and it matches up against something you've experienced. I don't know.
Well, There's a plethora of books that have definitely influenced me along the way, but it's almost a quote that has the most strong influence in my life. And it was in a biography, but it was for Frederick Douglass: "Without struggle, there is no progress." It's very simple. But when you apply that to everything, and you look at the world from all angles, whether it's business, whether it's relationships, without struggle, there is no progress. And that is, a quote out of a biography that absolutely sticks with me. You go through decisions in life and everything, and it's something I always, when things get tough in the boardroom or those four walls, I always remind ourselves, hey, without struggle, we're not going anywhere. There's going to be part of that along the journey.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We are up to our final question, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And what we want to know is what your priorities are for this coming 12 months as CFO of Hofman Hospitality. What would those priorities be?
Yeah, so definitely the priority is going to be, solidifying the back office function for the organization. I think that's going to be one of the key pillars for us to do as we begin to expand and grow. So this is obviously building good infrastructure from an ERP perspective, making sure that we are partnering with the right tools, bringing the right business intelligence tools in, so that we have the tools as leaders to make good decisions going forward. As well, too, is making sure that our people have the right, correct resources to enhance their functions as well. And obviously, too, growing the concept. We have a couple of openings coming up that are in the pipeline over the next 12 months. And obviously making sure that we kick those off successfully.
Chris Crawley, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
All right. Thank you so much, Jack. I appreciate it.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.